Apologies, late start. We got our whole crew in Philly, so we had to wait for them to find their spots. But I'm glad that they did, and I'm glad you guys waited up with us for
Wow.
pretty pretty phenomenal game, right?
Yeah. I mean, this our show is kind of like Tatum. It took us a minute to get going, but we're ready. We're jacked. We're gonna make
You
plays.
you just knew it was going to happen, right?
You know
It
it's
was
gonna.
it was either going to be Tatum or Smart, right?
Right. Well, yeah, because I think Jalen had pretty much emptied the clip the first 3 quarters. I just didn't think that he still had that extra gear he could shift into to carry them to victory. And Tatum, let's be honest, he was due. I mean, you look at his numbers end of the night. He was 3 for 11, and he hit that one big 3 pointer that put him up 80 to 78. And from that point on, it became Tatum's game. He
Yeah.
he did exactly what guys who are supposed to be top tier talent in the NBA are supposed to do. On nights where you can't do a damn thing right, if you're within striking distance, you make teams pay.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to talk about here tonight, like quite a bit. And
Yeah,
I want to crunch some. I'd like to crunch numbers a little bit more, just in terms of lineups and what they did. It was an interesting game, just in terms of the swings. The Celtics went ice cold. Philly took a big lead, couldn't get a bucket. Down 15, swung it all the way to basically like a 9 point lead. Did so on the strength of a Derek White lineup with Tatum on the bench into that fourth quarter, too, and you were able to sustain it. And then Ime made the decision to go back to the starters for the last 5, 6
that was
minutes.
not Ime. Ime didn't make that
I,
decision, John.
I am
That
rusty.
Ime would love to make that decision. Ime would give quite a bit to make that decision.
Ime loves that double big lineup. Joe goes back to his double bigs, which isn't really his binky per se. Okay, Joe has not been forged from the fires of double
Right,
big dominance the same way Ime was and the Celtics' success was last year.
right.
It was thrust upon him. It was, the analytics clear say, hey, this is a good lineup. It dominated the NBA last year. When healthy, you got to run with it. So he's kind of sort of running with it, but it's a second straight second half coming out of the break with the fully healthy lineup where those guys came out and looked like dog, you know what. Um, and they pissed away a lead against the Pacers in the third quarter of last game, made it competitive all the way through, and absolutely let Philly run away from them there in the beginning of that third quarter as well. So it didn't look great. The decision to go to it late was a little curious, and I was
Yeah.
worried about it when he did it, and it worked out, and they got what they needed out of it. That Derek White was playing so well, removing him just seems strange. Forget about tonight. This is going to be a story that goes on into the future. The better Derek White plays, and the more he's able to do, and the more he's able to create, and the more he impacts the game in the many ways he's currently impacting the game, the more it's going to be hard to not. If you're going to insist on putting big bodies out there, it's hard to keep him off the court, which means someone's going to come off the court, and that someone's going to be Marcus Smart. And it's a conversation that's going to be had if you're going to keep, because again, you didn't go Robin Al, you went you went Alan Grant late, so you're keeping that extra kind of bigger body there, and it could be matchup specific. There could be nights where they go single. We'll see how it goes, and I think he will play around with it because Grant played the significant minutes tonight after playing 6 last game. So it's good that Joe's not going to lock into one lineup only. It's just going to be hard to keep Derek White out of that closing lineup if he's playing that well. Regardless, you got to find a spot for him in there.
Yeah, yeah, but the one thing I will say, I think tonight it was a little bit more matchup specific because with Joel Embiid on the floor, you've got to have multiple bigs on the floor who can switch out because they're going to get switched out on. So I think it was a little bit more specific. But if you look at the final
Totally, you
numbers,
have to. You have
yeah,
to. Yeah.
when you look at the final numbers though in terms of minutes played, I mean Marcus Smart played 26 minutes, Derek White played 25, and I
Yep.
think we're going to see a lot of nights where their minutes are going to be pretty much interchangeable, just depending on who has it going more that particular night. But when you talk about scoring the ball, Derek White is in a great rhythm right now in terms of what he can do. And to me, I think the really special thing for the Celtics is that he's getting you points and it's coming in the flow of the offense without necessarily plays being called for him to score. He's just reading and reacting to what the defense is doing and making them pay when they don't give him the kind of attention that his scoring of late deserves.
Yeah. And that's the thing is he's doing so much. He's creating on his own, which is just something that you just can't. I wouldn't say it's just it's such an important thing when, especially at times when the offense stagnates, when you do have, because now you've got Brown, Tatum, Brogdon's able to create on his own, and Derek White as well. It just does so much for the offense where when you do see those double big lineups, it is really difficult. Again, when Marcus isn't hitting his shots and you do have, I'm going to spend at least 20, 30 minutes on Rob Williams' baseline jumper to end the half. But
John,
that was,
we've been begging for that shot, begging
yeah,
for that shot, and not and the thing about it is that it's not like it's a shot that's out of his wheelhouse.
yeah.
It's literally a shot that if you go to a Celtics practice and you watch Rob work on his offensive game, you're going to see him shoot that shot. If he shoots it 10 times, he typically makes it like 7, 8, 9 times. And when we get to games and we see him matched up with guys like Joel, who does not like to go outside the paint, you're thinking that's the shot that you absolutely want to see him take more of, because one, it's within his range, and two, in certain matchups, he's going to get that shot and it's going to be relatively open. Like tonight, he had a couple of those shots tonight, which again, I think we need to see more of that from Rob going forward, because it's not like we're asking him to do something that he does not have the skill set to do.
Yep. You want to see it. So again, I'll let you pick and choose. There's a lot we're going to talk about. We're going to wait for Bobby and Josue to jump on here for sure, and get their takes as well. We're going to talk about just the interesting lineups and the rotations that Joe is playing. It's a second game. You don't play Muscala at all. Hauser,
Right.
who was so big in the game before, didn't play tonight. And as you said, big bodies being able to throw some beef at Embiid is super important. Having Grant in there, I think, mattered. And I think that's why you went double big as much as you did tonight. And it makes sense. But you've got Tatum. Second straight game he struggled against Philly. He's had some rough games recently if you match it up against better competition. And so that's going to be something you want to talk about and look at. Jaylen Brown, money there in that little stretch. The non-Tatum minutes, those always worry me, those non-Tatum early fourth quarter minutes. And Brown put it into another gear, made that phenomenal pass to Rob in transition, then comes up with a steal on that next possession. He was terrific there. And just the continued play of White, like we said, we're going to keep talking about. And again, Rob, we talked about the baseline jumper. I do want to talk about it. I also thought it was one of his kind of springier games. I thought he was more active. You're still not seeing full verticality, and he's not challenging shots as much as you would like to see. They've missed him on a few lobs, so I'm not going to say he's not the lob threat he once was. I still want to see him. I think he defended well. I actually think he stood his ground well, but he's still not just kind of flying through the air with the greatest of ease like you want to fully see it, but he looked agile and active, and he was running well tonight, which I like to see. But dealer's choice in terms of where you want to start with your analysis of tonight, Sherrod.
Well, I mean, I think I like to start with Tatum, just because Tatum
Yeah.
for really 3 quarters was just garbage. And then, he hits that three that puts him up by 2, late in the second half. And then he just takes over in the final minute. And for Tatum, you know, he's going to have nights where he can't make shots. And we've seen that the last couple of nights in the first half. But the great players, when the game is absolutely up for grabs for someone to take a hold of it, they're the ones that take it by the strangle away victory from the other team. And that's what he did. I mean, Philadelphia, when they go back and watch the video, they are without question going to feel like they should have won this game. Because when you look at the way that they were playing, they were the more aggressive team, I thought, in the first half. They were far more engaged. They were doing all the things that you're supposed to do in order to position yourself to win. But the problem that they ran into was they became too Joel Embiid heavy. They really didn't figure out a way to get other guys involved. And that is, again, that's a big, big problem for them. They have to be a little bit more diversified. And, people are going to crap on Marcus Smart for his shooting. And certainly, at one point in the game, I think maybe first half, certainly, believe through the first 3 quarters, he had more shots taken than Jason Tatum, which would never happen. But Marcus's defense on, James Harden, I thought was really good. I mean, James Harden had 21 points, but he was like 4 for 15 or something.
Not a factor.
He was not a factor.
James Harden didn't hurt you tonight. He
No,
didn't.
no. And Marcus Smart had a lot to
in
do
fact,
with
he was
that.
hardly noticeable, honestly. Like, he did not hurt you tonight.
No. And when Philadelphia cannot win if James Harden is not the second or third best player on the floor, they just can't do it. Because most nights, if you're talking about guys playing at their absolute best level, James is going to be one of the top 2 or 3 players most nights. So, Smart did. I thought he did some good things defensively. He took some shots that I did not like to see him take. I thought he forced it a few times, which we're accustomed to doing. But overall, his job is to be a top tier defender, and I thought he did a pretty good job of that tonight against a really good scorer in James Harden.
And again, you do have to take some things with a grain of salt. Like there were ugly portions of tonight's game,
Mhm.
for sure. But Philly played really good defense
Yeah.
on the Celtics tonight. They really did. They really clogged up the lane. They clogged up passing lanes. They made it really difficult for them to get where they wanted to go. A lot of times you would get some paint touches, and they just weren't really sure. Do I continue? Do I float it? How many of those kind of wait, shoot, got fall away, front rim kind of indecisive sort of looks did they get? Jalen had a couple, Tatum had a couple. They'd get in there and didn't really know where to go from there, and they weren't really able to get it where they wanted to go. And Philly did a good job kind of keeping them to the perimeter on a lot of their stuff and forcing them into turnovers and Tatum I think got forced into a lot of bad turnovers just trying to kind of get places that he just couldn't get to. Double team was frustrating him. Even some single defenders were frustrating. He was just having a difficult night getting where he wanted to go. But credit Philly's defense; they made it a little bit ugly for Boston. So I'm not going to completely throw that out. But you still want your star to be defense proof, not fully, but that's the whole point. That's what makes you stars. You don't want your star to be able to be taken out of games. We've seen it a couple times, with Tatum, more than you'd like to see it. And you're not going to, discredit everything that he's done. But last game against Philly, not only did he struggle to score, he struggled to get shots off. I think he only had 12 shot attempts last time that they played one another. And that was that amazing game where they were without Brogdon, without Smart, without without Al, without Rob, and they lose JT to a broken face 15 minutes in. And Tatum scores 12 points on horrible shooting, and they won that game. And that was probably one of their best wins and one of Philly's worst losses this year. You kind of wanted to see Tatum come out and acquit himself a little bit better, but still, frustrated. And I think he kind of took himself out of the game mentally a little bit. He was getting frustrated with himself
Yeah. I mean, the one thing you touched on.
until the end, which is fine.
Exactly. Right.
Last game against Indiana, he admittedly had a crap game and scored 31 points. A lot of
Yeah.
people wrote about that's part of the evolution of Tatum. You can have a bad game and still walk into 30 points. That's pretty incredible.
That's
He had a pretty bad game tonight, and he still hits the big shots late in the game winner. You'll take that, but you still want to see him be able to beat that pressure and not have it get to him the way it did.
Yeah, I mean, in the Indiana win, he had a really good second half. Tonight, he had a really good fourth quarter, and still, at the end of
Yep.
the day, his numbers were solid. But you touched on Philadelphia's defense. Their defense during this 5 game winning streak they had prior to tonight was one of the top 2 or 3 defenses in the entire NBA.
Yep.
And I asked Doc Rivers about that before the game, and essentially he said that it's just guys getting accustomed to playing with each other, them developing a rhythm. But I think there's some truth to that. But also, they've taken one player who has been just defensively challenged his entire career out of the rotation altogether, and that's Montreal Harrell, who just doesn't play. And the reason why he doesn't play is because guys are shooting damn near 70% from the field when he was on the floor.
Yeah.
Doc Rivers has figured. I mean, he's done some things as far as taking with their rotation to make them a better team defensively. But you're right, Tatum. I would like to have seen him to assert himself a little bit earlier. Like I thought, like Jalen Brown came out with the kind of fire and intensity that you want from one of your star players. He had 8 of their first 13 points. Was clearly getting where he wanted to when he wanted to. The only thing that slowed him down in the first half was those 2 quick fouls in the first quarter. And other than that, Jalen Brown, they did not have an answer for him. And that's the thing that makes the Celtics team so dangerous. They're figuring out ways to beat you in unconventional ways. Like they don't need Jason Tatum to go off at 35, 40
That's the
points.
difference this year.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas if you look at a team like Philadelphia, you let Joel Embiid have a game where he scores 12 points or 15 points and see how many points they lose by. They probably lose by the number of points he scores because he's that impactful. He means that much to them. And the Celtics have figured out ways to get other guys involved that, while, yes, for them to win a championship, Tatum has to be great, Jalen Brown has to be great, but they don't have to be great for them to win.
No.
against good teams.
And it's not just individuals. You have games the Celtics have won this year where you're right. Tatum's been terrible, where Tatum and Brown have both been off, or one or two have been missing multiple players. You've had games where they've shot 20-something% from three, games where they've turned it over 20-something times, and games where they've been out rebounded by 15 or so and still won those games. So it is amazing, is it's not one thing, like a lot of teams you can say, like, well, if we shoot well tonight, we'll be okay. Or if we just, are able to match those guys on the glass, we'll be fine. Celtics can come up short in a lot of different ways and still find, and that speaks to the depth of Bob Ryan on the Ryan Goodman podcast on CLNS Media last week says the deepest team he's ever seen. I'm not saying this to be
I'm not saying.
disrespectful to Bob, but Bob is old. And Bob has seen a lot of basketball,
With all due respect to Bob, I can't imagine that this team is deeper than some of those Kuzi, Russell,
They
Sats. I
can't
mean,
be.
those teams had like 7, 8 Hall of Famers.
They
This
had
team
seven
has
of they had
maybe
seven of the
maybe two or
15
three.
best players in the NBA at any given
Yeah,
time,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm excited about this
A
team
little
too. But
hyperbole there. He might be talking modern era. Let's go
oh,
80s and on. It's a pretty free. I mean, and again,
yeah,
obviously those 86 teams, you've got Seasting and Walton and those guys coming off the bench. And there's a lot of depth there, even on the earlier teams.
I mean, if you're talking post Bird era, then yeah, I think you can make a legitimate case that this team might be as
Deeper
deep as
than deeper than 2008. 2008, in fact,
I would agree.
you could even argue if 2008 looks better on paper later, but you have to remember Rondo was not ready for prime time yet in
Right.
2008, and neither was Perk. He was useful and he fit what they needed, but I mean, you needed to pick a guy up off the street in PJ Brown to be able to kind of put you over the hump. You got a guy like Eddie House who was good right there, but that's not like those aren't stars. Like
Right.
they've got guys here where you're like, you've got to get your sixth and seventh guys. You're like, you've got to get more minutes for these guys in Brogdon and White right now. And your number 8 guy in the rotation played 6 minutes last game because you didn't need him. So that is pretty deep right now. Not just deep with playable players, deep with good players. And I think that's might be what he's talking about. 1 through 7, that's as good as they've been in a long, long time right now with those guys. 8, if you want to throw in Grant as well. And if you're
Yeah.
getting any contributions from Hauser or Muscala, again, that's saying a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top 7 players on just about any team in NBA will be among the top 3 or 4 players on that team. And I don't think there are a lot of teams that have the top 7 where they're going to be one of the either the man next to the man or next to the man next to the man. The Celtics are like that. So they're definitely a deep team. They definitely have a lot of potential to just wear you down because I think it's important to recognize the fact that the Celtics seem to be at their best in the second half as a team. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that their best players are just better than your next level players. When you get past your first line of stars, who's next? And when you compare the Celtics, who's next after Tatum and Brown, and you start looking at the other team, once you get past their top tier stars, the Celtics match up pretty damn favorably against almost every team in the league in that regard. So this team, if they're healthy, I just don't see anyone beating them for the title. I just don't see it. Can it happen? Absolutely, but it won't be because those other teams are better. It'll be because either the Celtics underachieve or something goes wrong with coaching or there's an injury, but it won't be because that other team had more talent. That's what Brad Stevens has done. He's put them in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty impressive right now. You definitely have to, it's, again, it's because those guys are playing as well as they're playing, particularly as with White and Brogdon, that it's really really impressive what's going on right now with these guys and again, as you said, you can survive bad Tatum games, you can survive a lot of not great games right now from other people. So it's been pretty impressive. Again, thanks. We got a packed house here. We're pretty psyched to have all of you guys here on the show joining us. It's a late one. It's Saturday night. You could be doing a lot of things. It's not lost on us that you are spending your Saturday night with us. So thank you. We want to tell you really quickly about one of our sponsors, one of our longtime sponsors here at the Garden Report Athletic Greens. Go to athleticgreens.com/garden free 1-year supply, vitamin D5 free travel packs with your. And here's what I want to do. I'm doing the end of this read last because Nick Gelso is so geeked up about the new T-shirt that we're going to give you if you sign up for our stuff that I have to show it to you right now. Here it is. Oh my
Ooh,
goodness gracious!
John, where's my damn T-shirt?
Look at that thing.
I need that in my
Oh
life.
my goodness gracious!
I need
Nick
that
has
in my life.
Nick has outdone himself. That's what you
Nick,
get.
we may get some MVP chance for Nick with that one. That might get
That's
him
what
an MVP. That might get him an MVP chant next time he's on the show.
That's how you debate. That's what you get, Nick Gelso. Thank you, buddy.
Oh, Nick.
But for those of you out there don't know about Athletic Greens, terrific kind of one-stop shopping supplements, 75 vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and what's the word?
I don't know.
Adaptogens. Adaptogens is going to
I
be
screw that word up all the time, John. I'm not even going to try it. I'm not even going to try it.
Adaptogens is going to be on our bracket this year, by the way. One of our Garden Report terms of the year. We are bringing back that bracket, by the way. But check this out; it's really good stuff. If you are looking for kind of ways to get yourself back on track, health, it's a little late for New Year's resolutions, but honestly, it's just a friggin' date on a calendar. It doesn't really matter when you start and when you start taking your health seriously. Athletic Greens is there for you. This deal is here whenever you want it. So if you don't want to start now, start later. Great way to kind of kickstart your day, give your body some of the things it needs, improve, sleep, recovery, mental clarity, your immune system, gut health, all of those things. Instead of going to shop for a million different places, just go get it all in one spot. Boom, one scoop, cup of water early in the day, and you're done. Once again, go to athleticgreens.com/garden free 1-year supply vitamin D, 5 free travel packs with your first purchase, and this Nick Gelso special. This T-shirt.
MVP.
Yeah.
MVP.
MVP. So we love it. So all in all, I'm not going to say good win, bad win. What's your general vibe coming off of this? Like when you're watching the game, are you a win is a win is a win. You're on the road. You're playing the number 3 team in the conference. All of these are good wins. Both teams are as healthy as they are right now. I kind of thought they were going to take it to Philly a little bit more. I'm not saying I'm disappointed in the win, but I really do feel like the Sixers are not going to be a good matchup for the Celtics if they face off in the finals. I don't know that tonight changes my opinion, but generally speaking, I don't think Philly, I don't think we're back to the years of 2018 where Joel Embiid's like, they always kick our ass, and it's not a rivalry. But I can't see this team giving you trouble if you run into them down the road.
No, I think this what I've seen this season when these teams have played is there's a different gear that your mental toughness has to shift into in order to win. And Philly hasn't figured out how to get to that gear yet, and the Celtics have. I mean, this is a game where the Celtics absolutely should not have won this game, based upon how they played the Thursday night. You look at
They
the
didn't
last game.
play. Yeah.
No, I mean they've played 3 times this year, and the Celtics have just been a mentally tougher team 2 out of those 3 wins. And there's no rhyme or reason or way to fix that. The Celtics have that extra something that when you're matched up with a team and you're comparable, you're going to find a way to get over the hump. And the Celtics have shown even when they're not at their best, even when they don't have their top players, even when every single just analytic data point that you have says that they're going to get their asses kicked, they're going to find a way to beat Philly. And it's not always going to be because Philly makes a bunch of mistakes. It's just that the Celtics limit the mistakes that they make, and then that I think just mentally rattles Philly. Philly was shook in that fourth quarter. You
Yeah.
could tell. I mean, they were totally mentally shook.
Shook.
And
They were jogging. They were like
yeah,
completely out of their rhythm. They
yeah,
they looked like they got taken out of the game.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, and the Celtics had everything to do with that. And I'm just thinking over the course of a playoff series, I don't see that changing. I
Yeah.
don't see where Philadelphia's all of a sudden going to figure out how to be mentally tougher against a team that's kicked their ass, not just this year, but just over the last few years when the games absolutely mattered most.
Yeah.
And the Celtics are now even better than those teams that Philly lost to in previous years. So
Yeah.
they're in a tough predicament if they're going to find themselves playing the Celtics in the playoffs. That's not going to go well for them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I left this thing up here because this is correct. It's so funny. Like a lot of what you say is out the window if they lose the game, like, and that's why it's like when people are like, oh, here they are being negative about it's not really negative. You looked at this game, this was a crap game for a lot of it. You did a bad Smart game, a bad Tatum game. Brown, who was great for that stretch in the second half, he put up points, but he was all over the place in the first half. Really weird shot selection, tunnel vision. I don't think he passed once, but he was great when he needed to be. Tatum was great when he needed to be, but for stretches it wasn't a terrific game. You really had that really good stretch, that kind of the Derek White stretch, and then Brown there into the fourth quarter where they really looked good. But there was just it was not a great overall. Their offense looked out of sync. They weren't terrific on defense. I'm not going to get into the officiating and the Embiid stuff. I guess those are fouls. I don't know how else you play defense against this guy. It's one of the more frustrating things in the world to watch. Like, it just is what it is. Like, what are you supposed to do in some cases? He's just barreling into you and you're just stuck there. But that's how they play. That's what they're going to do. You took their best punch as far as that was concerned. I think I could be wrong. Did they get what were the final numbers? Did he outshoot
Yeah,
Boston's
they
entire team?
did Embiid. I know they made 30. They were 28 for 35. Yeah, they did because the Celtics only went to the line like 12 times, and Embiid I think went to the line at least 18 times.
Embiid 18 free throw attempts. The Celtics
Right.
had 12. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was the thing is like the Celtics. That was a problem. They couldn't quite figure. It's a strange game where they only shoot 37 threes, yet only have 12 free throw attempts. Because they were not able to get to the paint, but they didn't do most of their damage from behind the arc. They shot it fairly well from three, but it wasn't one of those 53 pointer sort of games. Really was a bit of a rock fight, just trying to figure out where that offense was going to come from.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going to be like that, obviously, from time to time. But the thing that I keep coming back to with the Celtics, and we talked about this earlier on a show where Philadelphia played well enough for most of this game to have won. There's I don't think anyone is going to debate that Philadelphia. If this were a fight, a boxing match, Philadelphia would way ahead on them to everyone's scorecard, but the Celtics delivered that knockout
Yeah,
punch in the fourth, and that's it. That's game time.
and
So
this is yeah, and you're right.
right.
And go ahead.
So that's why I can't get caught up in the well, if they would have scored another 2 points, they would have won, or Philly would have won. And yeah, you're right, but how many games can we say that about? A lot. The bottom line is when the game absolutely mattered the most, the Celtics were the tougher team mentally. They made the shots and they got the stops, forced the turnovers. They had Philadelphia where they wanted them when it mattered most, and that's really that's the game. That's ball game, folks.
Yeah, Celtics made the winning plays, and that's it, and that's that. And I do want to applaud Joe. I kind of and I promise we're getting to Al next. I promise. I promise. I was saving it a little bit for Bobby because I know he loves Al discussions. I promise we're going to Al next. I'm going to applaud Joe because on that last play, I kind of jokingly tweeted, don't just do one of those give it to Tatum and get out of the ways, run a play thing. And obviously I got dunked on for that tweet, but the reality is they did run a play, and it was a pretty damn good play. It wasn't just ISO, give it to Tatum, top of the key, clear out, and let him go to work. I hate that stuff. I don't think that those things go very well. But I liked what they did, putting him in the backcourt, getting him running, coming to a hard stop there because he's coming with a head of steam. He stops on a dime. He was able to get separation on that three-pointer, but he just gets a catch with his back to the basket there, turns around and sets up. It's a lot harder to get something going to the basket. You almost know he's pulling up and it's going to be off balance. That was a smooth, in-rhythm shot and a beautiful pass with that Marcus really threaded the needle on it to get him there. Pretty risky pass, actually. That could have gone. I don't even want to talk about that, but that was not an easy pass Marcus made. Great catch, great stop, great shot, and terrific play. So hats off to Missoula for dialing that up. I thought that was much better than the just give it to me and get out of the way sort of last second play that you tend to see a lot of times. From the Celtics. Let's talk about Al. This is a fair point. They're absolutely dead if Al doesn't go on that 9-0 personal run when they were really floundering there and hit his first three field goals of the game back to back to back. 9-0 personal run, 9-0 team run to take it from a 14, 15-point game down to something manageable again. Al doesn't do that. We might not be having any of these conversations right now.
No, and you got to give Al credit for frankly just taking advantage of what I thought was there all game long. I thought Al, I mean, if Al were having one of those heat check type games, he could have gone for 30. And every shot would have been like a relatively open shot. And you go back and you look at this game, Al missed his first three shots, and every single one of them were catch in rhythm, wide open threes. So Al getting hot isn't that big a shocker against Philadelphia because they don't defend him. Because their best player at that position doesn't defend outside the paint, and Al is a smart enough player, crafty enough player to get to his spot. And the Celtics, to their credit, are smart enough to get him the ball in those spots. So Al, there's no question. Al, we talk about that spurt that he wanted knocking down shots, but I just thought his overall defense on Joel was good. And again, you can look at the numbers and say Joel, scored a ton of points. Joel had to work his ass off for most of those points. Joel was not getting the ball in the sweet spots where he's used to, dunking on guys left and right. Al made him work. And if a guy goes for 41 and you made his ass work for those 41 points, you can walk away feeling good. And if to Al's credit, again, I thought as the game wore on, I thought that pressure that he was putting on Joel, I thought it did affect Joel. I didn't think Joel was nearly as impactful or dominant down the stretch, other than getting to the free throw line. That was,
Yes.
but the problem for Philadelphia is that when he's getting to the free throw line, um, it reinforces their one-dimensional offense, and they become a lot more easy. They become easier to defend. It's get the ball to Joe and let him go to work. And we've seen time and time again against the Celtics, that's only going to keep you in the game up to a certain point where it's going to blow up in your face because you need other guys to step up. James Harden, again, we touched on him earlier, was a non-factor, and part of that was because they became so damn Joel Embiid heavy. And part of that is that's just how they're built. That's just how they're structured, which is why I think that they're no matter who they play in the postseason, they're going to have a tough time moving on to the next round because they're so one-dimensional.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is like you're just those takeover Harden games, which used to be 1 out of 2, 1 out of 3 games, it's now 1 out of 8. You're just not you might run into a Harden, just heater one a night or two. It's not like he doesn't do other things. He's either leading or top 2 in the NBA in assists. He's still an impactful player. He's still a really good player. But the days of James Harden taking games over offensively are over for the most part. That's not saying he's still an outstanding player. He's just not going to be that guy who's just single-handedly just torching you every single night in a 7-game series. He's capable of doing it. The frequency has gone way down on that, and he's someone that you can defend him now where he used to be basically a cheat code. So that version's been gone for a couple of years, but again, they just don't have enough here. How many times have we seen Tobias Harris absolutely lay an egg? I mean, he had a pretty good game tonight for him. I mean, he's been a total non-factor in a lot of games against the Celtics as well. Maxey hasn't been as I Maxi hasn't been as good as I thought he was going to be the way he started the year. He's hot and cold. There's not enough juice on this team, on this Philly team, to run with you. I don't think. And again, going back to it in a 7-game series, I just don't see it.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That is their problem. They have enough to keep themselves in the game and
Yeah,
compete. There's no doubt. But
yeah,
getting over that hump, that's going to be very difficult because, again, James Harden, and, the last couple of years, people want to attribute him not being that James Harden of old to just him not being in great shape. I don't think it's a conditioning thing. I think it's just a father time thing that we're seeing with James. And again, he's still a dynamic player. Don't get it twisted. It's not like he's just 1 foot in a basketball grave and about to retire or anything like that. He's still a very good player. He's just not nearly as overbearing, over dominant type of player and performer that we've seen throughout the course of his career post Oklahoma City. He's again still a good player, but they're going to need him to be much better if they're going to have any shot of making any kind of postseason noise.
yeah, yeah. No doubt about that. Other things worth talking about tonight. We did mention a little bit of Rob. I do want to get back to that. How do you think he looked? Again, it's still not all the way there, um, but it looked like a tick in the right direction. The way I was looking, just how he's moving, just seemed a little bit like I said, just seemed to be running better. If I'm just going to point out one thing, thought he was moving better. I mean, obviously the 7 for 7, he still does these great Rob things. His hands are so good with his catches down low on a couple of those balls. Those are just balls you can't get into most bigs, in the lane on those tricky bounce passes. And I mean, and he's still good on the offensive glass, even if he's not just skying high and throwing it down with his chin. And obviously, he has that one alley-oop dunk coming out of commercial, and ABC friggin' smokes it. We don't even get to see it in real time. But it's still not all of the explosive verticality that you expect, but it definitely looked – I'm just saying physically, both physically and his head being in the game. You look back, the worst game Rob Williams ever played was that couple of years ago when like they were like, okay, Rob has arrived, and he goes and he fouls Joel Embiid like 4 times in 25 seconds and then missed that whole game and this and that. This was a good game for Rob against this competition. I thought he stood his ground really well. Obviously, having Horford in there helps, but overall, I thought this was one of his better games we've seen.
No, Rob to me was like just a prize fighter who recognizes I'm not going to knock this guy out. I'm not going to knock this team out. So I'm just going to hit him with body blows. I'm just going to jab him. I'm just going to do all those little things to keep just racking up points, helping my team win, doing all that type of stuff. And that's how Rob's going to have to be. But the thing that he showed tonight, we talked about it earlier, he's a much better perimeter scoring threat against Philadelphia than he gets opportunities to showcase. And I thought, again, when you're playing Philadelphia and you're the Celtics, you know Al is going to knock down some shots. But if Rob starts making those shots from the baseline, that changes the calculus if you're Philadelphia on how you defend the Celtics. Because if their fifth option can play above the rim and can score from 15 feet out, that's going to force Joel Embiid to exert a lot more energy defensively. And so, to me, your best defense against him is just making him work more as a defender.
Well, I want Bobby's take on this too. The Rob, Bobby said that was like, like a loud cheer in the press box sort of situation when that happened.
I said bang.
What I will say with this, the reaction to Rob's jumper from the teammates says everything about what we say too, which is they are dying to see him do that. That wasn't oh my God, if any other person hit a baseline jumper from 15 feet at the buzzer, which is a totally normal shot that most people take and make, they'd be like, hey, nice job, high five, good way to close it, Tatum just they're not going to freak out, tackle the guy, start screaming and this and that. That wasn't just like, oh, you made it, what an unlikely shot. That was, there it is, buddy. Do that again and again and again and again. I think they want to see that too. It's like, come on, man. Be the guy we know you can be. Take those shots. Have confidence. And then he never shot again. Not only that, and then he never looked at the basket again from outside 10 feet.
There was another play late. He just fired it out of there. Didn't even look.
Boom, hot potato. He didn't do it again. And all we're saying is the threat of it. Yes, you're not going to shoot 77% for the season if you start incorporating 15-footers into your repertoire, but that doesn't matter. The threat of it opens up so many other offensive possibilities for you and for the team, and it's essential that he take those. It's essential that he not only take them, it's essential that he looks to get to spots to be able to be open to collect the pass and take them. But it is almost always incidental. It's late in the clock or something, has to happen for him to dare do it, and it makes no sense to me.
And that's why Horford plays late. He has more.
Because he can do that.
He brings more to the table, particularly on the offensive end. We've talked about it all year. Rob should be at a point where he can close games, and those offensive limitations prevent him from doing so. Fortunately, they have Al Horford still playing like prime Al Horford, drilling threes at a 40% rate. And
we tried to wait for you on Al. We tried to wait for you. We tried.
Yeah. So I know you guys hit on that already. Rob ends up being, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th story in this game after a strong start. I thought he looked fresh. I thought he looked active early. I thought guys looked for him, particularly Tatum. And he got in a good flow early that sort of dissipated as the game went on. Rotations went away from him, as I just said. And it's a step. I thought this was one of the better looking games from him this year in terms of just his activity. And
But this super chat asks for it. Yeah, I think, and Bobby said it earlier, Al's got to kind of close because he can do so much more for you. Rob needs to do those other things. He needs to be able to be a scoring threat if he is going to catch the ball. Defenses tighten up late. If the ball comes to you, you got to be able to at least look to score it. Rob not doing that kind of creates a 4-on-5 sort of situation late in those games that you almost just can't live with.
And
that's
that's
why he doesn't close games.
They already face
unless you're up and you want the D. But if it's a bucket for bucket game or you need buckets, you really can't have him out there.
They already face spacing limitations too late in the game without him out there, so it would have been even worse. It was not a great end to the game offensively. They let Philly right back into the game, up 10. And you wonder about some of those lineup decisions. Joe didn't
that's kind of where we started. Taking Derek White out and going back to that double big lineup, which
and no Brogdon either. So crucial the last game.
And I know you tweeted it, Bobby, but that's the second straight second half that starting lineup, that double big starting lineups come out and gotten smoked. Yeah. And Sherrod made a really good point, that having some beef out there mattered. So even when you didn't have Rob out there closing, you had Grant out there, but you're taking Derek White and Brogdon off the floor. And that's a hard thing to do. Period, because they're both playing outstanding, but especially tonight when that was your best lineup, and you've just said, well, let's go back to the other guys who, caused us to go down 15 last time that they were in together. That's kind of risky, and he got away with it, but I think every Celtics fan at the same time was kind of like, I don't know if we should be doing this right now.
Yeah, for sure. And it didn't look pretty by any means. I mean, the worst possession of the game, one of the worst possessions of the season was that late shot clock heave from Tatum.
The Tatum one.
Yeah, and he makes up for it with a nice putback, and of course the game winner. But you look at that double big lineup now, stats not updated for tonight, but they come in tonight -7 per 100, the main one. I'm looking for that Grant one with Horford. Probably not much better. That wasn't a great lineup last year either, but those aren't showing well statistically now. And we know Joe's a stats guy. I wonder how long he'll lean on those. They're great defensively. I think every coach loves to have that rock defensively, especially in a tight game. And they did pile up stops as this game went on, particularly on Embiid. So you held a balance there, right? I thought the offense capsized late, but the defense played as well as it did all game late against Embiid. Really frustrated them. The only play where they got beat was when Smart came in late. Missoula had his arm like a windmill trying to get Smart over there to help Horford, and he hit a tough leaner that the Celtics ended up answering. But they wore down Embiid throughout this one. Credit to Grant, who bounces back from that weird 6-minute game against the Pacers with some good defense here tonight. Of course, Al's still that rock as the main guy against Embiid there. Others like White and smaller guys had to switch on to him throughout this one. It was a really tough performance that frustrated them, certainly. Sherrod, you saw the complaining to the officials throughout this one, and guys just pummeling to the floor throughout. But they persisted against Embiid, and Joe actually said, I thought one of the most interesting things he said after the game was that they managed the emotions of handling Embiid out there. And it certainly was a very emotional night for Smart, for Grant, for some of those guys who do get involved with the officials a little bit more. Less Tatum, though, which was good to see.
That was good to see and surprising to see at the same time, because he's the one guy that frustrates me more than maybe any other player when he lets his emotions get a hold of him, because typically his emotions come out when he doesn't get a call that he's supposed to get, and he doesn't get back defensively, and it leads to a potential layup or an offensive opportunity for the opponent that you just can't allow to happen in the playoffs. That one possession where you're complaining about a call that should have been made could lead to a layup, and you wind up losing by 1 point, and you think about where could we have maybe got a bucket off the board that we gave up. That stuff really was glaring. But you touched on a little bit earlier about just the defensive centric lineups that I think Joe Missoula is looking at more. This team has already shown they can score like nobody else in the league. Their defense has to tighten up. Their defense has to get better. They have to be more connected. And I know that statistically they're doing a lot of good things, but we saw in this game, the defense they played in the fourth quarter was significantly better than what we saw through the first three. And they've got to tighten that up a little bit to where what we saw down the stretch, getting stops, getting rebounds, we need to see more of that throughout the course of the game. And, I talked to Marcus Smart about that before the game, and he said, the one thing that people have to understand is that, now that we've got everyone healthy, we can finally start putting in the kind of work with that core group that we wanted to all season to do. But because guys are in and out of the lineup, we just couldn't do that. So this latter stretch of the season, I think we're going to see more of the Celtics leaning on their defense to win them games, which I think means they're likely going to make these type of decisions where you'll have a couple of guys who are making some shots and seem to be in a great rhythm, but you're playing a team that Memphis needs to carry you over the hump to get the victory. I think Missoula is going to lean into that lineup, those type of combinations, more so the latter stages of the season here, to just give those guys some muscle memory of working together so that when it really does matter in the playoffs, it won't be like starting from scratch for those guys.
Yeah, I'm torn on it because we've seen this offense sway so much throughout the season. You're right, Sherrod. It started off so hot. They've
Did you
regained
just
it.
say sway? Did you just say sway?
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Joe swayed.
You meant to do that, right, Bobby?
Yeah. Real quick on that, though, before we bring in Joe Sway. I'm holding on the double big. I am. The numbers don't look great. Sometimes it doesn't look pretty. Rob certainly needs to reach his potential to make it hit the way it did last year, and Smart too as he comes back from this injury. But I just think we know what it's capable of at its best, and I'm pleasantly surprised by what they're getting from White in the second unit. Staying aggressive, staying involved, sparking that group, and I thought some of their best runs all game came with their bench out there against Philly's bench. Philly's bench stunk in this game, and
They're not
I had a
good.
lot of hope for
Yeah.
Jalen McDaniels in this game, and he was terrible.
I think he's going to be better than we
Yeah,
saw
that was
tonight,
big.
though. I think he's going to be better for them
Yeah.
than we saw tonight. But
Not
you're right,
against
though.
Tatum.
Yeah, he just wasn't very good at all. And on any metric you want to use, his numbers did not add up to a good
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, that was a tough. I mean, well, it's hard in general for him to just jump into that kind of matchup on a Saturday night, but he just never found a rhythm. But I'm with you, Sherrod. I'd be better. But I also think that
-23.
the Celtics did an incredible job of just taking advantage of the game when Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris were on the bench, especially in that first half. Tobias Harris was hot in that first quarter, and I felt like they did a bad job of trying to survive those minutes. The Celtics carved into that lead, and before halftime, the fact that it was a 2-point game, I just think that took a lot out of the Sixers, even though they tried to come right back in the second half. And the Celtics went on that huge run. And, Al Horford, those 3 consecutive threes really started things off, right? And then you also had Derek White aggressive. I think when guys started going and finding their offense, back came Jalen with a huge second half. And, of course, Jason Tatum at the end of that fourth quarter. But, I mean, it was really those guys that really sparked it, that really pushed the Celtics ahead, and they were able to hold.
Don't let me.
Did I lose you guys? Yeah, man. Don't do
let
that
me
to
slow
me,
your
man.
momentum.
You
Yeah.
guys,
I was setting,
hate that. All right?
I was setting the screen for John because I saw his back end.
I thought, man, this looks better. I mean,
No, I was setting the screen for John Zannis.
I don't know. I want you guys. I want
knew
you
it.
guys to carry it.
There's just so much from this one, John.
Well,
These games get better
the
and
double
better
big thing was
as
on
the
my.
year goes on.
The double big thing was on my radar, Bobby, and again I tweeted it as well.
Where
like,
are you on it? I didn't catch your take.
It was abolish it forever. Look, again, I agree. I'm right where you are. It's situational, but you shouldn't rely on it as the end all be all. It worked for us last year and we were so dominant, and let's just roll it out again, because as you said, it only works if Rob is who's in the cafeteria right now. Okay. Let's take a pause. It only works if Rob is transcendent Rob. And Rob is not transcendent Rob right now. Rob is effective. Rob is useful. Rob is not a Superman right now. And last year it worked because Rob Williams was basically the defensive player of the year before he got hurt. An absolute freak, impacting every second of every game he was in. Every minute he was in, it changed everything. The entire complexion of the game changed. He's not that guy right now. If he is, then yes, do it, because as we saw last year, it literally looks like it's 6-on-5 sometimes, and you could change out a couple of different players and still make that defense work if Rob is Rob. When he's not, I don't see the benefit unless you have to play it against teams like the Sixers, where you need to throw more bodies at Embiid.
Yeah,
So
for
I
sure.
don't want to abolish it. So that's not the right way
Here's
to
the
look at
thing,
it.
John.
I don't want to abolish it. I want to not use it as a default, as the automatic start every game, start every half, start, and close the games.
And I'm so tempted by swapping White for Rob because of that 119 number. They're so dominant offensively with that small ball group.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
But what have we talked about with Rob? The involvement. Starting gets him more minutes. It gets him playing with the starters who are more likely to set him up. And they've only started 2 games with that group now. I guess 3 after tonight. They have to mesh. They have to play more together. They have to see if they can get back to that level with that group out there, because I think it's the biggest reason they made the finals last year was just how suffocating that group could be and how dominant offensively they'd score off those stops. It hasn't shown through 8 games now, 9 games of that group playing in general, but they've played so few minutes together across those games that it's hard to draw anything from it yet.
Yeah.
Tough matchups. The Pacers went small and ran him off the floor. Tonight you're dealing with Embiid and his dominance all game and dealing with the fouls and everything else. So you just need to see it more. Like, give it time. Make some tough calls. And this is the thing, John. Forget Joe's game plans. Forget timeouts, all the stuff we've talked about. His greatest challenge is now. Who are you putting in late in games? What combinations?
Got a lot of good players. You can't
and
play
it's
them
really
all.
hard. Yeah.
And you can't always play the same guys every game, because when we talked about Joe at the beginning of the year, the thing I said would be his biggest challenge this year would be, what happens if you realize, I don't know if Marcus is the guy. I like Marcus, but I kind of like this guy better.
And that happened tonight, didn't it?
And
But he
happened,
didn't go there.
and he couldn't do it. I wish I could find exactly the moment, but that was my big thing, is what happens when you've got that and you've got a guy like Marcus and you bench him and you close with someone else and he sits there. Fine. He might say the right things, do the right things. He's going to be irked. And if it happens again, you could have a Marcus problem on your hands. What happens if he decided that he didn't like the way Jalen was playing, or Tatum? Goodness.
So when did he come back?
Nobody's sitting guys of Jalen and Jason's caliber. That's never happening unless you're mad at them. But you can, tweet, but you can sit
he loves
Al,
Jalen.
you can sit Rob, you can sit Smart. Those guys should be interchangeable. Outside of Tatum and Brown, really, the rest should be matchup dependent or hot hand dependent. And that's how I think you have to look at this team, is what's my best 5 around those 2 to close games with, based on how the game is going and what I think each is giving the game at that moment. That shouldn't be hard to do, but I think it is going to be hard to do for Joe.
Well, he kind of sandwiched it in this game by sitting him from the middle of the third to the middle of the fourth, like about that 5-minute mark in the fourth, and let Brogdon and White roll for that stretch. And it worked to some degree because they end up winning and scoring just enough down the stretch, getting just enough stops down the stretch. But there is a case that if you play White a little bit more, if you play Brogdon more than 20 minutes tonight, maybe you go away a little easier late. Maybe you have some better possessions when Philly goes on that run to take the lead late. Because that closing stretch didn't go the way it should have.
No.
It kind of went good possession, bad possession.
It was white knuckle time. Yeah, you're right.
Every time they had a bad possession, Philly was scoring the other way with ease.
Let's talk a little bit more. We'll get Josue involved again. Sherrod said he had to pop out. He may pop back in. We do need to tell you about another one of our sponsors. The Garden Report is brought to you by BetterHelp. And we've talked about BetterHelp here on the show before, and we want to tell you a little bit about it now. When you're at your best, you can do great things, but sometimes life gets you bogged down. You feel overwhelmed. You're not showing up the way that you normally want to. Working with a therapist can help you get closer to the best version of you, because when you feel like the best version of you and you feel empowered, you're more prepared to take on everything that life throws at you. I've personally benefited from therapy. I have people close to me that have personally benefited from therapy. Again, I'm talking from kids to friends to what have you, the coping skills, the way to kind of, behavioral adjustments that you can make and different things that you can do, learn to set boundaries that are just going to make life, which is really challenging, a little bit more manageable for you. And I think everybody could benefit from it. So if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option, convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. So if you want to live a more empowered life, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/garden today and get 10% off your first month. Again, betterhelp.com/garden today and get 10% off your first month of therapy. If you have ever thought about it, I would at least encourage you to go take a look, research it on your own, see whether it's right for you, and consider giving it a try. Back to what we were talking about, guys, and the lineups. Josue, what did you think when they switched it out and went away from the lineup that was working? And what do you think, Joe? What do you think Joe should be doing? Kind of, because this is what we're about right now. You got two things down the stretch, right? Stay healthy and figure out exactly what it is. Exactly. Now
Right.
you've got 20 games to tinker a little bit, right? I know people, if you prioritize things, 1 seed, health, or finding exactly, or hitting your stride and finding exactly the right combinations. So you're healthy for the first time. This is the stretch here where you really got to figure out who's going to do what and when and with whom.
Right. And I think Derek White is making a really strong case for himself. How do I hopefully sound better? But because of everything on offense. So there's finding guys, knocking down shots. And, with Malcolm Brogdon, I'm glad you brought that up because I thought it was weird. He played, 8-10 minutes in that first half? I don't know if it's an injury thing or if they want to dial him down a little bit. But, I mean, I'm with you, though, John. They have to figure that out in the second half because, I mean, this is that time when you're supposed to, especially against the Philly.
Yeah, and that's the thing is but the question is, Bobby, would it be a failure here if Joe just said, I know what I'm doing, I'm just going to go with my guys and let's just should he be experimenting a little bit here? I think you should be messing around a little bit.
They don't have a ton of time. And these
They
teams are
don't.
right
That's what I mean
on
is
their
you got
tail.
to
So it depends.
when you have full lineups, you got to play around a little because you'll have some load management games too.
Yeah, and it depends on how you feel about the 1 seed, which I'll ask you, John. I think it's pretty important. 2 seed wouldn't be the end of the world, but then you're playing in Milwaukee in a game 7, so it's fairly important, especially if you really fear the Bucks, which you should have a healthy fear of them. And I think you stick with your lineups, your rotations that have gotten you to this point. Again, we've nitpicked throughout the whole way. They've had their ups and downs, and they certainly had their ups and downs in this game tonight, but they just keep getting it done. And when you believe in all these different guys to play their roles, for them to mesh, and for them to execute these plays, these set plays down the stretch, I'm thinking of Tatum tossing it to Horford on that little breakout play late in the game. It's worked for them. Like you can't mistake the record so far. They've played a ton of games. They've played a ton of tough opponents, and they've had a million guys missing all year. So I think you buy into what you've done, what got you the finals last year, and what might look a little erratic or, stagnant at times, but ultimately leads you to so many wins over this past calendar year. Like there's just something, it's all cliche, John, and you'll hear it in the pressers throughout when you go watch them tonight on our channel, but you really do have to start to believe in this thing Joe talks about this group just making it work, believing in the decisions that they make rotation-wise, and executing late in games, even when things are so frantic. I mean, this place was shaking, John, when Tatum goes down the floor and finds Horford for that last 3. And never mind the couple of timeouts and B tossing it down the court. Like there were just so many moments where they withheld it. It worked. It worked. Like that's all you can say. I don't even know what to say about the timeout thing anymore, but I get what he's gotten at, and it's in environments like this where I think you really grow as a team. This place was rocking.
I like it. I used to think that's a terrible idea. I like not letting the defense set and slowing things down. I like that not only did he not call a timeout, he's waving his arms, speeding them up. Go, 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 go. I like that. I do. I'd rather be aggressive in that situation there. I like calling a timeout when you start to get into something and you're like, this possession looks awful. Stop, but I like the idea of like giving them the ball and letting them go there. And it's worked for him a couple of times in the past.
What do you think of it, Josue?
You're back.
I like it. I like it when it's to go ahead. If the game is tied, I like taking that risk and letting the guys figure it out. Keeps the defense on their heels.
I like it. Sherrod, welcome back. Did you do anything important?
Oh, no. Not really. Not really. Not
Yeah.
really. This was
Not really.
I just have you guys talked about the little smart kerfuffle?
No, not yet. Do you know anything about it? Josue, you can check out Josue's Twitter. We have it on our YouTube as well. Little situation. What do you know about it?
Smart took off, by the
Well,
way.
I mean,
Couldn't follow up with him.
Yeah, he was gone.
Oh, damn it. Okay. Well, the guys that were involved in that, they were escorted out of the building. I was right behind them when they were whisked away. They had a conversation with team security beforehand, and they basically, from what I could gather, what they were talking about was they were just kind of being a Marcus about being a flopper. But my gut tells me that there were probably more words that were exchanged that probably didn't have to do with flopping at all. But it was very noticeable for those of us who are watching the game that unfortunately the national TV cameras completely missed or ignored or didn't want to highlight. But as Josue's video points, he'll show you, Smart was pretty intense and verbalizing his feelings on the matter. So I would not be surprised if there's some type of follow-up conversation with security and Marcus Smart just to get his take on what happened. And there may be, more punishment for those involved beyond just this one game. But my gut tells me that there's not going to be anything of significance happening to them going forward.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
No details. Nobody talked to Smart. Nobody got anything from Smart after.
No, he was gone.
Marcus left. But to piggyback on that, he kept going back at the guy, had more words to say. So I feel like he really hit a nerve, and I don't think it had to do with flopping. Or if it did, he might use a different kind of language, but we don't know.
Different kind of language.
Interesting. I mean, that's all. That's going to be the question, obviously.
He said something that got Marcus fired up, and it had to be.
Marcus was fired up throughout.
He didn't appreciate it.
He rode a wave through this one for sure. I'm still stunned he didn't get teed up. Grant was talking in the locker room about some of the interactions with the officials, and he had said a couple said, "Oh, you're right, Grant," and they got into that thing again, John, tonight, right? I don't think it killed them, but Grant Smart definitely. I think Joe put it best when he said rode the emotion of the Embiid experience there.
Yeah, they dipped into that. Yeah, they dipped into the woe is me well tonight, and they've been really good about staying away from that.
I thought it was going to kill them, but it didn't, unfortunately.
Grant had like 7 moments tonight. There was one where I loved it. Rob just shoved him with one arm, like back to half court. He's like, shut up, And then you had another classic, where Grant goes down like he got shot in the face, realizes nobody gives a crap. He's not going to get his call. His team's on offense. He has no choice but to just get up and be like, I was faking and join the play, because otherwise he's dogging his teammates and letting them play 4-on-5. It's so embarrassing when you have to out yourself time and again. Like, stop doing it. There are cameras. People can see whether it was real or not. Stop playing possum. You're not going to get any sympathy. And not only that, I mean, sometimes when he gets hits, the refs are like, he probably deserves that call, but I don't want to give it to him. He got one that was like 6 seconds late tonight because the ref was like, shit, I do have to call that one, don't I? He's got to stop. He's got to stop.
Yeah, my favorite was the one where he got 2 free throws out of it, but they gave him the free throws, and he was still bitching after he got the call for the 2 free throws. It's just like, dude, it's like you got $2 now.
You kind of get it tonight, though, right? This is the most frustrating matchup when it comes to the officiating.
It is.
Embiid's gonna go to the line, and Harden's gonna fall right behind him in the parade, and it's gonna be how many free throws did Philly shoot in this one?
35.
35 to 12. So I get it. I get it on a night like tonight, but they overcame it. They overcame a lot tonight. I thought Philly punched them in the mouth so hard early. I mean, they just came out flying around defensively, shutting down the paint on the Celtics. They took that completely away from them. And then the third, the Celtics just kind of cracked it open. They came down 7 out of halftime. They let the lead grow to, what was it at its worst, 15, 16?
15, I believe.
15 was the biggest you got, yeah.
And then they just run those pick and pops, and they're back in the game in an instant. And they close it out, too. They have more energy. They have more depth in this game. And I think they have better ability at both ends of the floor than a Philadelphia team that's really good on both ends of the floor. I mean, this is a top 5 defense. This is an offense that can score at will going through Embiid, and he can certainly pile it on too. And they're just so equipped and so experienced and so tough to handle what he throws at them. I mean, they're just fouling down the stretch because that's all they can really do. Philly misses some free throws. He gets burnt out. And their game plan just seemed to work right up until the final play there, which was very well managed by Joe. I mean, we can't talk enough about.
Well, let's play that. Here's Bobby's question. Again, they've done this before. They put Tatum in the backcourt. They get him running. It resulted in that. Was it one
that
play?
Cavs play?
The Cavs game where it ends
on
up,
Allen
comes in with a dunk. In this case, almost if you think about that, and that's what Sherrod and I were talking about, him coming full speed forces the defense to have to defend him attacking the paint because of the pace, and he stops on a dime and he's able to get a clean shot. It's such a better look than just ISOing him top of the key and everybody getting out of the way, and then him having to get started from a standstill position. So it's definitely effective. It's worked a couple times for him. Here's Bobby asked the question. Here's Joe talking about it.
Joe, the final play call out of timeout looks similar to the one in Cleveland. What was the setup of that play?
Just get the ball to Smart and have Jason create separation, and then just make a play from there. And he did a great job executing.
And you called another one after Harris took the foul there. Was that the plan originally, or did you change that out of timeout, the second timeout?
I knew we had 2 timeouts. I knew they had a foul to give, so it was just a matter of kind of what the lineup is, what they were going to do. So we had options.
That's the most loquacious Joe has ever been, Bobby. Congratulations. That was incredible.
I later asked him where he got the play from. And he said he stole it from Brad, which I wasn't covering those teams as closely back then, but I do kind of vaguely remember them doing some of that stuff for Isaiah.
That was
Isaiah Thomas. That was Isaiah Thomas.
It was like you would set him up and he was like running.
It was kind of like a bang play for a game winner, wasn't there?
Under the basket and just come flying around like the road runner.
Yeah, he started Worcester and just worked his way up to Boston. That's what Isaiah started.
What was that one? There was one where he just kind of like bang, like pinball in the post and finished for the win, wasn't there? Was it Miami? A Miami game? There was one game where he finished on that play. I remember, but I can't remember who was it against.
Yeah,
it's a great play because you can throw right to the ball handler. You can throw to Smart, which throws them off. And then, as we saw tonight, you can stop on a dime and shoot.
You can do a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have a
whole
lot
it gives
of
you
time
great
to make
momentum into the zone too. Like you said, you're keeping a set defense off balance there, which is really well done. I wish we were able to talk to Brad more to kind of figure out where he got that from, but it's just an awesome play design. When you saw Tatum in the backcourt, Josue, you did say, like, here we go. We kind of see what's going on here. And then the shot that follows it, Embiid just sort of flung it, boom, in. And you saw him dip his head right away and no good. It took a lot of the emotion out of that moment and intrigue. The fans went crazy, but even they saw him like ducking his head. And
that was awesome.
Absolving victory. Josue, you were in with Joel. Obviously, we've heard him say a million times, this team kicks our ass. It's not a rivalry.
That was 2018. You did have 2021 where they beat the crap out of the Celtics 3 times, I believe. So and then last year was 2-2. So it hasn't been as lopsided recently. Obviously,
this year though it's 3-0.
It's 3-0 this year, but it was 2-2 last year, and I think 0-3 or 1-3 the year before. I mean 0-4 or 1-3 the year before. When that was obviously a really bad Celtics, but they beat the crap out of the Celtics in 2020, that 2021 season.
Story of my life. That's what Joel Embiid said to us. Sixers fans can take that
about tonight.
They want to. But yeah, about hitting that shot, and of course it doesn't count. And he knew it didn't count. He said, "Story of my life." With a straight face, everyone laughed. He didn't crack a smile. I mean, it's a tough L, man. Like, he gave it all he had in this one, and we talked about it before the game, Bobby. Like, Sixers really needed this one. Sure, they've been playing great basketball heading into this, but they want to beat the Celtics. They want to convince themselves that they're on that level. And Doc can say what he wants and can get these guys pumped up and say that, look, we still have a chance and everything, but they have to believe it. I don't know if they do. Look,
Especially
that
after
quarter,
last game.
that
right?
was the best. You know what? This second quarter or fourth quarter, whatever you want, that's probably the best I've seen Philly defend the Celtics. And they were still only up by 6 at halftime, still only up by 2 after that big start, that huge start in the first quarter. But then the Celtics were like, oh, you guys want to get into a shootout? Well, let's do it. Jalen hits 2 in a row. Tobias hits 2, but then Derek White starts going. Like the way they ended that first quarter, buzzer beater for Robert Williams. Derek White just making plays one after another. It's just too much. I mean, if people want to say it's the depth, sure, the Celtics are a deeper team, but at the end of the day, I just feel like the Celtics just have their number in one way or another. The way that they defend them, and mentally, I think they really take up space in Philly's head right now, and Joel Embiid especially.
Well, especially after last game, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Celtics beat him with Blake and Sam and basically nobody, and
Doc's
Tatum
pissed.
playing like ass.
Yeah, he was so mad about the defense, and they picked it up this way, at least in the first half, and Doc didn't complain a whole lot about it, but he just said, man, like, this team is just really good. And of course, he led with talking about Jaylen Brown and Tatum and Derek White. He really emphasized what Derek White was doing. Like, he thinks that was a big part of the second half, along with, of course, which he said kick runners from Al Horford.
We've talked a lot, John, about how Rob's going to be that X factor. Like, if he's healthy, they're going to win the title. If not, they won't. But White, and I've talked with Ahmed actually a lot about this. I think he actually said it before I did, our producer. White's the guy who's going to swing a lot for them too, because he's settled into this groove, and he's this depth piece that's probably like the best 7th man in the NBA. It's pretty lopsided there in terms of like the quality of the depth piece that he is on this team. I mean, he was just averaging 20 a game.
He's started more
games.
games than he hasn't this year. It's really strange to even call him a bench player. It's
an incredible luxury, and now he's playing well there.
He's basically like a 6th starter, It's bizarre, but yeah, I mean, that
if he's good, they're unstoppable.
Sherrod and I were talking about it earlier. When you have White and Brogdon playing as well as they're playing at a level where they could start for any team. You know what I mean? And you've got them coming off the bench. That's an insane luxury. You do not have starter caliber players, like not just starter caliber, good starters sitting there on your bench, ready to come in and just basically just pick up right where and you might even argue at this point that, I mean, there's some people out there that'll tell you both of those guys are better than guys who are currently starting. Like, that's an insane luxury to have. And if you're getting anything if you're getting the best version of Grant and anything from Muscala, or Hauser knocking down shots when they need to be called upon, there's a lot of depth here when because those guys are playing as well as they're playing right now. We did want to talk about one more piece of sound here I wanted to play here. Again, on the final play, this is Tatum talking about the final play and what was kind of going through his mind.
No, we got like a routine every time out, depending on who's in the game. Malcolm either helps me up or Grant. And Grant was right there, and I always wait for one of those 2 guys to help me up. And he grabbed my hand. I looked at him. I said, it's game time. We going home. He said, all right, let's go home.
He called game.
Let's go home.
He called game. Let's go home.
Let me cap up the show with this, John, there, because we know Tatum hates Grant at times.
No, he loves him.
Doesn't he seem to love him? Doesn't he seem to love him? Yeah,
he loves him. He's like his little brother. He wants to give him noogies.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
He can't stand him, but he loves him. And John, that's why they're gonna keep him.
They'll keep him if he takes the $9 million he's worth now.
Right.
I was gonna say if he didn't love him, he wouldn't even talk to him. Wouldn't give him that attention. But he does that out of love. That's brotherly love right there.
So I talked to Grant tonight in the locker room about the 6-minute thing that confused all of us, and I talked to Joe a little bit about it tonight too. it's frustrating, Grant said, especially, if you lose a game like that, it's really frustrating. But they've talked a lot as a team, and Al talked about this tonight as well, that guys are going to have to accept stuff like that down the stretch. There's just, as we said earlier in the show, too many good players, too many different matchups, too many different guys overlapping positions like Hauser. Whatever it was that led them to play Hauser as much as they did last game against Indiana was a smash hit. It was just an excellent game from him, and it was the right move to play Hauser over him. They went to Hauser early in this game to see what he could give them after Grant played an extended stretch early.
2 minutes.
And then they went right back to Grant, and that ended up being the right call tonight too, because he's just one of the few guys on this roster who's really equipped to handle Embiid. Same goes for Giannis. But there'll be if they play Indiana round 1, you might not see a lot of Grant in that series.
Right, but it was the right call not to play Hauser, because you had to, the ball boy had to come out with the towel to get the drool off the floor that was drooling on James Harden's beard when he saw that Sam Hauser was guarding him. I mean, and it took him that long before he went right at him, which I get. I would do the same thing.
But Grant switched on to him once or twice too, and Harden had the same sort of expression. So
yeah, but Grant's a little bit bigger, so
and
when
then
you
Grant
go
just
by
wrapped him up,
wrapped him up. Exactly. Yeah. Sam's not going to wrap you up. So
speaking of Harden, 2 of 7 in the fourth.
He's not that guy anymore.
Nope.
He can be. He isn't. He's not that guy as often as he used to be. He was great last game against Memphis. He still has. He's just not. Again, Sherrod and I were talking about it earlier. He can still be that guy, but he used to be that guy every other game, and now it's just fewer and further between. He's not a guy who's going to just dominate a playoff series and put you on his back and carry it. He's the passenger, and it's Embiid's team, and he's just not as lethal as he used to be. And you can defend him, and Smart, we said tonight, did a good job on him, staying in front of him, and he's just. You don't fear him the way you did, obviously, a few years ago. He's far from washed. He's an outstanding player. He's just not that guy. Not consistently enough, to like take over games. Yeah,
when he's on, he's on.
He still can. Of course,
he
can. Yeah.
He just doesn't move.
Yeah. I was going to say, Bob, you pointed it out. It's chilling when he doesn't have the ball in his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that killed them. Then he's dribbling into oblivion.
Yep.
He's not scoring off those plays. It's a killer possession, and that really let the Celtics back into the game there late.
Yep. Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap. What do you think? Wrap it.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Fun night. We keep piling these up. Fun nights, and I'm sure the Garden's rocking on Monday, so we'll be there in New York. You as well, Sherrod?
I will not be there Monday.
Sherrod and I teach Monday night.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're teachers. Educators.
A lot of fun games coming up.
You will have a Nick Gelso sighting. Yeah.
You guys have spring break.
Nah, not yet. You'll have a Nick Gelso sighting on Monday.
MVP.
Gelso and Jimmy Toscano
MVP.
Monday. Again, you support any of our sponsors. You get, look at this, guys.
MVP.
Hey.
Whoa.
Let's effing go.
I love that shirt.
That is why Nick is MVP. That shirt.
I push hard for this shirt.
The form is in the description of our show. If you support any of our sponsors and can show proof of it, put the receipt in the form. We will send you one of these T-shirts. Definitely go get one. Cool, fun design. You get the whole gang in there. So the Garden Report T-shirt is yours. That's our new design. We're sending some out to people now. For those of you who don't or haven't already subscribed to our Celtics YouTube channel, Celtics All Access, for exclusive Celtics content. And also, if you want to check this out ever, say you miss a show, you miss part of a show, you caught the tail end tonight, and you're not going to be able to watch tomorrow, you can always get the audio version, driving to work or doing whatever the next day. Check it out, Garden Report here. There's a little, QVC situation there. Take you right to it. Garden Report Postgame Show. We upload the audio soon after this show ends, and it'll be there waiting for you, probably within the hour, but certainly by the time you get up tomorrow, if you want to check that out as well. Pass that along to all your friends, and do us a favor. If you are going to check out the audio version of the show, we love ratings and reviews. It really helps kind of drive us up the algorithm, the chain, whatever have you. It really is important. It sounds superficial, but if you like the show, and want to pop on over and give us a good review on Apple Podcasts, that really actually does do a lot for us, and we do appreciate that when you do. Happy to be back. A little under the weather. I know the chat thought I was drunk or high, which is what people always say. I'm just really sick, but I couldn't miss this show.
I thought you tapped
Obviously,
out.
all these guys. No, I'm in rough shape. But
Thanks for hanging in there. Lots of great post game stuff tonight. Go check it out,
I didn't
guys.
want to play the hero, but yeah, go to our YouTube channel.
No. This is your flu game. This is your flu game, John. All right,
flu game.
like it.
Yeah, but I didn't ham it up, you know. So.
And Josue and I, more to come. Celtics All Access.
Yeah, man. I got plenty to break down. Stay tuned.
Check that out. Go check out all the press conferences, all those guys doing work out there, getting all of our stuff, getting the interviews, getting all the inside information. And Sherrod Blakely, follow all of his stuff on his Substack. Sherrod, what's that?
Sherrod.substack.com. Real simple.
Sherrod.substack.com. I'll have a graphic made for next time.
Ooh, that's dope. I like that.
Yeah.
That was
Against. Sorry, I don't want to ham up the coughing, but I gotta abort. We will